Hey, what's up everybody? It is Kellen here from Starter Systems, and welcome to Glen Helen. Well, at least virtually in a video game. It is the 2017 Glen Helen National in MX Simulator, and we're going to be having a little fun ripping this track up today, seeing what it's like, this year's version of the track, and also talking about some real-life motocross. I did this for Hangtown last week, where I talked about my thoughts and opinions going into the season. We're now rounding the books, and again, I of course will be talking more about my opinions and thoughts on real life moto, and always love to hear your guys' thoughts and opinions in the comment section below. But you know, let's talk about this track first of all. I have not ridden this track even with the slightest. I've seen it in a couple screenshots. That's my extent of seeing this track, so I'm gonna be a little rusty. I apologize, but I'm gonna try to learn this track as quick as I can. But it is Glen Helen, and anybody that knows me on this channel knows how much I love Glen Helen. I consider it my home track, even though it is probably like the 7th closest major track to me. Being from San Diego, I would say Paula and Verona Oaks MX are definitely closer, and there used to be a couple other tracks open that were nearby. But Glen Helen is also quite close to me. It's maybe an hour and a 45-minute long drive to get there, but it's where I've probably done most of the racing that I've done in my life, in real life. So I consider it my home track, and I really, really like this track. I've been to some other tracks back on the East Coast before, and Washougal as well, and I still would prefer riding Glen Helen or seeing Glen Helen than going to those other tracks, although Washougal was pretty good, I must admit. So I do love coming to Glen Helen, and of course I will be there this weekend. So anybody, you know, strolling around, if you catch me moving around anywhere, even if it looks like I'm in a hurry, please don't hesitate to, you know, tap me on the shoulders, come say hi, something. Even if you think I suck, just tap me on the shoulder and tell me I suck. I don't care. I always like talking to fans of the channel, or just fans of motocross in general, and doing some bench racing, and I'm always open for it, even if it's in the middle of the dang moto. Tap me on the shoulder, say what's up. So I hope to see you guys there, and I hope that you guys see me there. But if you don't, I hope that you guys enjoy the race this weekend, because I love Glen Helen, as I've mentioned 100 times already, and I really am stoked that the National is back here. And the track, obviously, so far, quite a bit different than we have seen it in years past. That's a pretty long section leading up to the finish line jump, which is the pretty standard table single jump that they've kind of melded into for the pro race now. And then it comes back through. This section right here is honestly kind of more sandier than you would think. Like, it is starting to get a lot more hard packed dirt, but they brought in sand to that section specifically to break it down, and I know that specifically, this track actually goes right here and then breaks into some sand rollers, which I don't really know if that's going to be true or not for the real track, since there is no sand over in this area. They might bring it in, but right now, physically on the Glen Helen track that I know, there's never been sand over here, or there has been, but there isn't now. Like, it's definitely just more all dirt. But then the classic jump, the like tunnel jump back over the start line. Oh, that was a weird kick. And it's like just a weird different track. Like, even Talladega this year, instead of it just being the 180 Talladega that we know, it's like a right-hander that goes up the hill, which it's done before. It's done this where it goes up this short chute hill in the back, but it normally will turn right a little bit before this and drop down the other side. This time it goes all the way down to the regular downhill of the short chute hill, and then spins you up right up to the top of Mount St. Helens. On the very first, it's like 3 corners into the first lap, so that's going to be really awesome to see how many, you know, riders and bikes are going to be crammed into there going up Mount St. Helens. But yeah, just on the topic again about me being at Glen Helen, I will be working for MotoX Addicts this weekend. Any of you that have never visited motoxaddicts.com, please check them out. You can click the link in the description below to their website. I'm going to be doing some work for them. Just kind of started doing this week, actually. Just put out an article today that is pretty unique, where I broke down how the championship in the 450 class might have looked if the races were still 20 laps instead of 20 minutes plus 1 lap. And it's been met with some reasonably positive reviews so far, so I'd be really appreciate if you guys would check that one out as well. And again, if you see me at Glen Helen, don't be afraid to say hello. But let's break it down into real life moto, shall we? This track obviously has been a Tomac track in the past, and I foresee it being a Tomac track in the future, or I guess this weekend. That's not too far in the future, but it is still in the future. Tomac rips at Glen Helen, and when he's on it, he super rips at Glen Helen. He's ridiculous. It is sort of Josh Grant and Blake Baggett, and really, to be honest, quite a few riders' home track, but I just don't see them being like so much better or even on par with Tomac at this track that they're going to just suddenly shine through and win. Now, if we look back at Hangtown, I will admit that Tomac, I would have expected to have like kind of dominated more, if that's what you want to call it. I don't like using the word dominate, because Tomac dominated Hangtown 2 years ago when he won by whatever it was a minute and a half in one of the motos or something like that. That's dominating. Tomac didn't really dominate Hangtown this year. Well, like I said, I didn't think he did. He was great in the first moto, just got in the lead pretty quick and pulled away immediately. Second moto took him a little while to get going, and oh yeah, sorry, it's a little late for this, but spoiler alert if you haven't watched the race yet. But second moto, Tomac worked his way through the field slowly but surely, and then caught Marvin Musquin with about, I want to say there's like 7 minutes plus a couple laps to go, and it took him maybe a good 5 minutes to get around Musquin. And Musquin's notoriously hard to pass. He rides a very wide bike, especially when he's leading the race, and he's been criticized before by some riders and even some just non-riders for his nature or his approach to keeping riders behind him, which includes cross-jumping in some aspect. I was carefully watching that battle in the second moto to see if I thought Musquin was cross-jumping or doing anything that was like really kind of a bad thing to do. And there was one section when they were coming out of the very back of the track towards the finish line, I think it was like maybe the lap before Tomac finally got him, where Musquin fought back, got Tomac, and then to just kind of shut the door going into the next corner, kind of cross-jumped him a little bit there. And what I was thinking of that, like analytically right away, was like, well, that's kind of the normal racing line, so I don't know if Tomac can be too mad about it, but Tomac and Musquin are kind of not really like super friendly with each other right now, and it has nothing to do with anything that they did to each other, but I know Tomac was obviously a little bit chagrined about the Musquin pulling over for Dungey to win a Supercross race earlier this year. He wasn't too thrilled on that whole situation, so I don't know if he holds it against Musquin or if he thinks KTM is the POS here or what, but I was just really curious to see their interaction after the moto, which they didn't really super interact from what I saw, at least on television. I bet they probably talked on the podium about that race or whatever, and Tomac gave Musquin props, so it didn't seem like he was too frustrated with him or anything like that. And then Musquin obviously was just kind of thrilled to be in that battle. I think everybody expected, even Musquin himself probably expected Tomac to be pretty damn hard to beat going into Hangtown, and he really was. So Tomac goes 1-1, Musquin 2-2, and Josh Grant shining through after finishing on the podium at Las Vegas. Fire under his butt is lit, and he goes 3-3 at the opener, so that's huge for Grant. Good for him. And as mentioned, we're going into his home race this week at Glen Helen, and Grant, the last time Grant stood on the podium or even did something that was like, you know, I hate to use the word like relevant, but he hasn't really been super noticeable lately. And the last time that I feel like he was like, wow, can you believe Josh Grant just did that? Like, when the last time we were able to say something like that was when he won the first moto at Glen Helen in 2014, just narrowly beating Ken Roxon to the line. So Grant knows this track really well. He's won here before, as I just mentioned. He knows how to win on this track. And I kind of expect Grant to not necessarily challenge Tomac for the win, but definitely give Musquin a real run for his money for second this week. Musquin was clearly the second best guy on the day, although when Grant was like on it and riding really well, like he was leading the second moto at Hangtown for a good bit, he was actually running the same or better lap times than Musquin, so he really seemed like he had a comfort level that was at least on par with Musquin in some aspect. It's just his fitness dropped off. And I think that his speed and comfort level at Glen Helen is going to make up for maybe that little lack of fitness he might have. So I kind of foresee, you know, Tomac dominating and Musquin and Grant going at it for second. I also see Blake Baggett getting into the mix this week. I was kind of disappointed with Baggett at the opener. I know he had some kind of bad starts, really was charging through the field, and it just, you know, it never really worked out. But Baggett knows this track very well as well, so he's going to probably do really well at Glen Helen. And then I think my top 5 would have to round out with Jason Anderson. I think Anderson, other than getting that, you know, rock in his eye in the first moto that cut a hole in the top of his eyelid that had to get stitched, he was ridiculously fast in the second moto, and his fitness is fantastic. It's going to be another toasty weekend in Glen Helen, and this track is already pretty physically demanding anyway. So I think Anderson's strengths will shine through at Glen Helen, and he'll round out the top 5. In what order? I don't really know. As I said, I think it's going to be Tomac, Musquin, and Grant again. I just don't see that top 3 really breaking up too much. But who knows? It could be something totally different here going into this weekend. But I'd love to know your thoughts on the 450 class as well, whether you think that Tomac might have a chink in the armor at Glen Helen. He was not that great at Glen Helen last year. He finished, I want to say third in the, yeah, he went 3-3 at Glen Helen last year, but in the second moto, he was definitely going to finish 4th until Roxon's forks had a failure, because Tomac was like running third the whole moto, then got passed by Jason Anderson, who caught him from pretty far back. So, you know, I guess in terms of like the recent national here, Tomac didn't look that great at Glen Helen. However, he did race the GP at Glen Helen last year, if you remember, and I was at that race, and a lot of people like to say, okay, well, you know, the Euros are trash anyway, so obviously Tomac winning there is a given. But Tomac in that second moto at Glen Helen was the exact same Tomac that was at Glen Helen in 2015 on a Geico Honda. He rode the exact same, with the exact same level of comfort. He looked almost identical to that Tomac. He was way faster than he had been all summer for sure. And he was the old Tomac. The old Tomac was back at Glen Helen for that GP. So that's why he walked through the field to win that second moto and went 1-1 at Glen Helen. It wasn't because the GP riders are trash. The GP riders are great. In fact, I think the GP championship is probably better than the AMA Nationals this year. I mean, there's like the top 10 guys have all won races before, and there's been, I think, 5 different winners in 8 rounds of the GPs this year now. It's ridiculous. So that series is fantastic to watch. But my point with that is that I think Tomac passed all those guys because he was on another planet that day and not because those GP riders are bad. So that's the Tomac I kind of expect to see coming out this weekend. He'll probably use some similar setups that he found for that GP, and you know, apply that to this weekend and see what he can come up with. And again, I think it's just going to be a walk for Tomac. So I think he'll be perfect through 2 rounds. He'll go 1-1 this weekend. And yeah, that's what I expect. Moving on to 250s. Bit of a kind of a wide open range here. I don't really know what to expect too much with the 250s just yet. Zach Osborne did just about what I expected him to do at Hangtown. Other than I thought he would get a bad start in one of the motos, but he really didn't. Like, he had 2 pretty decent starts, and then, you know, I think he was at least inside of the top 10, if not the top 5, both starts, and then just shot into the lead fairly quickly. Well, it took a little while to get around Adam C. and Cerullo in the first moto, but once he did, it was over by then. So Osborne going 1-1 at Hangtown was pretty much on par with what I thought would happen. Maybe not as dominant, or in that sense. I thought maybe he would, you know, lose a moto to Savacci or something, who in my mind was kind of disappointing at Hangtown. I thought he would be better, but still pretty much what I expected out of Osborne. And I don't know if I see anybody really stepping up yet to challenge him at Glen Helen. It's not like Osborne's been great at Glen Helen in the past, but he hasn't been like complete trash at Glen Helen to the point where I would be like, oh no, Osborne, he sucks at Glen Helen. There's no way he's going to go 1-1. But I think that his speed and pace right now is kind of above the rest, and they're going to have to do some catching up, and they're not going to be able to do that catching up in the 1 week between Hangtown and Glen Helen. So I think Osborne is going to win this weekend again. I don't think he's going to go 1-1 though. My personal opinion is that someone's going to get in there. Something different is going to happen. And Osborne is not going to go 1-1. Who wins that other moto? Wide open. I think that, honestly, Aaron Plessinger looked great at Hangtown. A little bit better than I kind of expected him to for this early in the season, because he did not look that great this early in the season last year. And these long start straights are awesome for Star Racing Yamaha. The Talladega turn or whatever, being so far away from where the start is, those Star bikes have some ridiculous power. And other than maybe Jeremy or Alex Martin out dragging those guys, there's nobody that's really like small enough racing in the 250 class that can take it to those Star bikes in a straight line. So I kind of think that Plessinger is going to get some good starts this weekend. I could be totally wrong, but I think Plessinger might be that guy that ends up like getting a whole shot or two and maybe just kind of running away with the moto before anybody can really say anything about it, including Osborne, including Savacci. Like, he's going to be gone before those guys even get into second. That could happen. I don't see Ferrandis, the other Star guy that I would foresee winning a moto this year, doing that after having a small concussion last weekend. He looked really good until he had the concussion. He was running fourth in that first moto. He was doing pretty much what I thought he would do to start the season. And then that concussion's probably going to set him back a little bit. Not that he's going to be like slower because of it, but I just think that he's going to be a little bit more tentative now that something caught him and bit him, and fortunately it didn't injure him too bad. You know, head injuries are gnarly, but it didn't, you know, do something that it broke a bone and knocked him out for the season or anything like that. So he'll be back, but I don't think he'll be quite ready to go up there and win races yet. I don't know. Pro circuit, I mean, Savacci was pretty good at Glen Helen last year, but the same Savacci that we saw at Glen Helen last year is definitely not the same Savacci going to Glen Helen this year. He just doesn't seem like he has that same... I don't really know what's going on with Savacci. I want him to do well. I'm not saying I hate the guy or anything like that. It just doesn't seem like he's got it all going right now. So I would look for Adam Cianciarulo to be the best PC rider again this weekend. Maybe Faulkner has a bit of a turnaround week. He was kind of so-so at the opener. He was much better in the second moto, but he wasn't really like the Faulkner that I think everybody expected to come into the outdoors. So maybe he has a better week. But I think it's going to be between him and AC for the best PC rider. And whether or not they get in there and fight with Plessinger and Osborne, I don't know. Could be an open door there as well. I think of the Martin brothers at Glen Helen, that Jeremy is better and should probably do better. And I think he'll be super fired up after DNFing the first moto last week to make up as many points as he can. So again, just like Plessinger, I think, you know, Jeremy Martin's going to be a guy that definitely, with that Geico Honda power and his short stature and his usual proneness to getting decent starts, he's probably going to get a good start, at least one of the motos, and run up front and challenge for at least a moto win. So I got Osborne for at least a moto win, but whether it's Jeremy Martin, Aaron Plessinger, Adam Cianciarulo, I really can't say who I think is going to win the other moto. I think of all those guys, the guy I would assume would have the best chance would be Plessinger. And I keep saying Plessinger. I really need to start going with Plessinger, which is his real last name, which he has corrected people on now. But, you know, I don't know. I don't know how to call it. It could go one way, it could go the other way. Who knows? Alex Martin could start up front and walk away from the entire field and surprise me and everybody, really, for that matter. But I don't even know if that's a surprise at this point. Alex Martin has had a tremendous couple of years. Looks like he's really getting dialed in on that TLD KTM already. Looked great at the opener, second overall, going 4-4, which almost never happens, but it did. So maybe Amart sneaks in there, does some damage. It's kind of like a wide open game, to be honest. But I would love to hear your thoughts and opinions, of course. That is what a comment section is for, in my opinion, is to be able to interact with you guys and see what you guys are thinking. You know, if you're going to go to Glen Helen, maybe mention it in the comments. And also, you know, if you're hoping to meet up with me at any point during this weekend, be sure to follow SYS on Twitter, which you can click in the description below, and myself, my personal account on Twitter, again in the description below. And like us on Facebook, all that business. Usually I post like something to say where I'm going to be that day or whatever if I'm at a track. So I'll let you guys know, of course. But yeah, if you aren't going to meet up with me and bench race at the track, bench race in the comments and let me know what your thoughts and opinions are this weekend at Glen Helen and to this track in game. Like, what does it look like? I think a couple of these sections are actually going to be just a little bit different, but the RF track crew got it very close and did a fantastic job on this track. I've seen a lot of really good reviews of the track in the track discussion thread on the forums, so another good track produced by these guys. I'm excited to see it race in MX Simulator tonight, actually, Thursday, at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern. You can watch live on Start Your Systems TV, twitch.tv/Start Your Systems TV. And again, if you haven't followed us on Twitter or Facebook, that's where we post all the info about the live streams, and on Instagram as well. But yeah, I don't know what more I can say to the 250 class other than holy crap, I think we're in for some good battling this year. That battle late in that second moto for everybody battling for second position was ridiculous, with Jeremy Martin getting in there and Alex Martin, and Faulkner was in there late, and Plessinger. It was awesome. As long as Osborne doesn't just absolutely run away with the title, I think that this title fight is going to be awesome. But nonetheless, I think the 250 class always just produces some really fantastic racing, of which we have not seen yet in the 450 class, although of course we're only 2 motos in. So hoping for more of that at Glen Helen, and hoping you guys are going to enjoy watching. If you guys like this video, please go ahead, like, comment, subscribe, the usual business. Be sure to download the track in the description below. Hit us up with your comments, questions, or concerns. And thanks for watching another video here on Start Your Systems. Be sure to catch us in the next one. I'll see you then. Later.